Okay, everybody, before we get going on the show today, we have some really exciting news to share with you. Andrea, do you want to break the news?
We're coming up on our 100th episode, and we're going to do a live recording.
It's going to be on Zoom on Thursday, September 4th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Dr. Cooper, we also have some big news about the website.
We do. We finally have our fatsciencepodcast.com website up and running. And actually, that's where you can go to sign up for this event.
Okay, so go to the website, click on 100th episode, the little button at the top, fill out the form, and you're going to have a chance to ask Dr. Cooper that question live on Zoom to celebrate this amazing milestone. And it wouldn't happen, it couldn't happen without all of you listening from all over the world. All right, let's get to the show.
One of the things about getting yourself strong is that your attitude is different and you have more confidence that you will survive whatever it is, the hip replacement or cancer or whatever it is. It has a tremendous effect on your mental ability to be positive even while having these kinds of treatments, that you're going to come out great at the other side of the picture.
Welcome to Fat Science. I'm Mark Wright, along with Andrea Taylor and Dr. Emily Cooper. It's great to see you two.
Hi.
Hi.
All right, on the show this week, the benefits of strength training. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll notice that we have two additional guests with us today. We have Faith Ireland, and if you're from the state of Washington, that name will ring familiar. Faith is a former judge and former Supreme Court justice. And also we have Russell Cunningham, an exercise physiologist. Those of you who are fans of the show will remember Russell's episode, the guy who ate almost nothing and ran up and down mountains for fun as an extreme athlete. Russell, it's great to have you on the show. Faith, great to have you on the show as well. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Faith, the reason that I wanted to have you on the show, you and I have been friends for probably 2 decades now, but you are a complete inspiration when it comes to the topic of weightlifting. So it boggles my mind. You have how many world records when it comes to weightlifting?
I have about 15 world records. Yes.
15 world records.
Yes.
Faith is 82 years old. She said it was okay if I told her age. You do not look 82.
No.
Faith is still lifting weights today. So we're going to talk about Faith's journey through strength training and what it's done for her life. We're going to talk with Russell, who's the expert in terms of physiology on this. But Dr. Cooper, let's just set the table for why we're doing the show. We hear people all the time say, well, you should watch your bone density. So tell us why strength training is so important.
Well, we have been hearing a lot about lean mass lately, and especially even in the conversation of obesity, therapeutics and things. There's been a lot of talk that somehow medications used to treat obesity are causing loss of lean mass. And that isn't quite the story, really, the whole picture. And we've talked in the past about how underfueled exercise in general, or calorie restriction, can actually cause lean mass loss. And so we've spent a lot of time discussing that. And so why we care is that lean mass is so important for our body, for our health, and for our vitality and our functionality, especially as we age. And as you mentioned, Mark, osteoporosis, osteopenia, bone density, those are all things that are affected by that is actually a component of our lean mass, our bone. So lean mass is like all of our tissue except our body fat, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about that. And so why we're talking and focusing on strength training is that it's such an important component of health, to pay attention to our strength and to our, because strength training and resistance training helps strengthen our lean mass and preserve our lean mass and make our lean mass more functionally healthy and capable of performing tasks and things. And so we'll get into that a lot more, I'm sure, during the episode.
Okay, Russell, I'd love just a basic statement from you. It sounds like strength training is kind of a magic bullet when it comes to health and physiology, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've got my own personal journey with, health and fitness and all that stuff, but I think for the purposes of this discussion, the the relationship of strength and muscular power to the aging process and human wellness is, if you look at the scientific literature on this topic, it's unequivocal that the stronger you are and the more power you keep going into your middle life and older years, the 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 better off you'll be. It's got correlations to all metrics of human health and wellness,
Hmm.
the quality
Wow.
of life. Yeah.
So, Faith, I want to go into your story. It's such a fascinating story. As I understand it, Faith, you were in a car crash in the 1980s that left you with some long lasting back problems, right? And tell me how you got introduced to strength training and weightlifting in the first place.
Well, it is interesting because 2 weeks after I was appointed to the judiciary and running for election, that happened about 3 weeks after, I was hit and run rear-ended. So I became the crime victim as well as the judge. And I had a lot of problems with that, and could not in the beginning really do much because I became pregnant, and unfortunately we lost our child in the last couple of weeks due to a
Oh, I'm
court
sorry.
death, not from the
Oh,
accident.
oh,
And so then I was going forward and I tried everything, anything anybody suggested I tried, including lifting weights. But I did not find lifting weights to be helpful. But then about 10 years later, I had a case going on in my courtroom at the Superior Court where there was a rear end accident, and one of the jurors was someone who had been also injured in that way, and he said that he had largely overcome his back problems by lifting weights, and I was interested to hear that. And then he said, but I found I had to kind of disobey my doctor's orders, which were to work up to the point of pain. And he said he had to work through the pain. And I thought that's an aha moment. So I called my physical therapist. I got a referral to a gym close to the courthouse. But he said, I want to warn you that this place is a magnet for power lifters. And I said, oh, that's okay. I'll stay out of their way. So I did. I started at that particular gym, and Willie Austin was the man in charge there, and he became my guru and the guru of almost everybody who was there. And he had been a University of Washington football star and then a power lifter and had been a champion power lifter. So one thing led to another, and he asked me to join in a little competition at the gym. It wouldn't be any big deal, and so I said yes. And because he had gotten me to a point where I was not having chronic back pain all the time, I listened to whatever he said, and I did whatever he said. And I also was helpful to him by taking over as president of a nonprofit that he has for training inner city youth for free.
mm,
So we had quite a thing going, and he was my trainer until he died, very unfortunately, at age 52 of a heart attack.
oh,
And so all of us who were there ended up in a gym called Seattle Strength and Power, which is still to this day probably the foremost gym for people who want to be competitive in either powerlifting or some other kind of strength coaching capacity.
Yeah.
So that's where I went, and that was what led to 15 years of competing and everything that went with that.
You told me, Faith, when we spoke the other day, that in the beginning, you found it super important to focus on your form. to make sure that your form was correct, right? Because I'm guessing you could get pretty badly hurt if your form was bad.
Yes, I think so. Well, there are two things. Yes, you might get hurt if your form is bad. And the other thing is if you just walk into a gym and start trying to lift weights, you may be doing it wrong. And then even when you do get into a coach, you have to spend a lot of time getting it right. So my suggestion to people is that if you're interested in weightlifting, that you do make sure that you have someone who is an accomplished lifter and an accomplished coach because they're not necessarily the same. Um, and you can read books. There are some good books on lifting weights, but it's not the same as actually being there and having someone who tells you how to do it.
I'm just chuckling to think back that here comes this probably well-dressed female judge walking into a gym with all these gorillas who are just herking weights. Did you feel out of place at all, Faith, or did it feel comfortable pretty quickly?
Well, the first gym I was in was at the top of was on the 14th floor of the Columbia Tower, and most of the other people also came in dressed to the nines, and then jumped into their gym clothes. The second gym, Seattle Strength and Power, you will find people there of every type and profession, and it is an amazing place in the basement of a building at Fourth and Pike, actually at Third and Pike, one of the most dangerous parts of the city. But it is an amazing place, and it's filled with trophies and awards and pictures, and all of my awards are there.
Wow.
I left them there.
Wow.
Awesome.
Russell, do you have any questions for Faith? Anything on your mind?
Oh man, I just think it's awesome. The concept of coming back from a major back injury and, you know, just the concept of rehabilitation. And that's where I've spent a lot of my own life journey. And then now in my professional life, rehabilitation and then bringing in that performance mindset, I think is really powerful. A lot of times, people will go to physical therapy and that's it. They're done with their PT, but it should be a more of a lifestyle, lifelong thing. Because bringing the whole concept of performance into the discussion of what I consider like normal adult human life. It's not just for quote unquote elite athletes. Every human being, by virtue of existing on the planet which has gravity, like we need to be able to generate force to move and perform in our environment. So you have such a fascinating story, Faith. I'd love to pick your brain sometime.
Feel free.
And Faith, I'm guessing that you felt good. I mean, when you reach a level of strength, it probably helps with confidence and balance and strength. And it just give me an idea of what it feels like to be in that stronger body.
Well, I had always been somebody who paid a lot of attention to my posture and my presentation. And I took modeling when I was in high school, not to become a model. And I took it again when I graduated from law school because I wanted to be a person who, when I walked into the courtroom, people took me seriously. And a lot of that is about power and about strength. And so it's been a lifetime of making sure that my posture is good and that I have strength. It was especially important to me after I stopped competing in 2014 after 15 years. I did that because I had a meniscus tear and I was told not to lift heavy anymore. But I was not told what heavy was, so it's been a bit of a proposition since then. But I continued to lift weights. I stopped doing the squat because I didn't have someone at my side, and that's one that is probably best done with a trainer or someone by your side. But I still did the bench and the deadlift. And to this day, I do the deadlift and I do barbells for upper body workout. I just have a different way of doing it now, and that is that I have 100 pounds, including the bar, and I lift it 5 times, and then I do that 5 times. So by the time you've done that, you've lifted a ton, and it only takes about 10 minutes to do that. And I do it 3 times a week. But it was especially important to me in 2018 when I went into a series of serious physical problems, beginning with needing a hip replacement. My hip replacement was from osteoarthritis. I don't think that was particularly due to having lifted weights as much as, probably hereditary. My mother also had those problems. And it was something that, the head of the femur was kind of crumbling and had to be done. So I had the first hip replacement. And then I was going to have the second hip replacement, but I was diagnosed with melanoma. Well, I didn't consider that too much of a big problem. Went to the university, had a surgery, all good, except that when they did the CAT scan, they found it had already gone to the lung. So then I had about 18 months of infusions. And by 2020, I was able to have my second hip replacement done and be more or less back to normal, which I've been since then. And so the
Wow.
weightlifting has been a really important part of my life.
Yeah. Faith, at your peak, what was the most weight you could ever deadlift?
Well, my deadlift was, just look at it here. Best deadlift was 286, and I did that a few times.
I don't think I could do 186 or even 86. Oh,
I can do maybe 6.
And for the
oh,
squat, which is probably the most difficult, um, my best was 248.
oh my gosh.
And then for the bench, my best was 143.
Wow.
And
Fantastic.
those are squat, bench, and deadlift are what is done in international powerlifting, except for Olympic lifting, which has different types of weightlifting.
Okay, I'm going to put Andrea on the spot.
Wow.
Andrea has a health club, literally
In
feet
my
from
building, in my building,
literally, yeah,
upstairs.
just upstairs. So Faith, Andrea has been talking about getting in shape and talking about lifting weights for I don't know how long, but quite a while.
Couple years.
I want you to give
Like,
Andrea, our dear friend, some advice on how to get started.
Well,
because
yeah,
we all hear about as we get older, and I am doing that, hopefully, we're all supposed to start or continue strength training because it's good for our bones, good for our health. And I know I should be lifting things. I know I should be strong because obviously just I mean, it's it's something you should do. You should go through life being strong. Um, but how do you get started? I feel like I should start a little bit. I could do a little bit on my own. I know I should probably have an expert help me. So while I have you,
yes.
what should I do?
Well, the first thing to do is to find out who your friends are that are strong and talk to them about how they got there because they may have people to recommend to you and places to recommend to you. I work out in a gym in my basement that my husband has provided me with, but so I don't need to go to a regular strength training place anymore. But if I were squatting, I would need to be doing that. So there are various ways that you can get involved. One is you can find the nearest gym or someone's recommendation for a gym, and then see if there is someone there who is a professional coach in weight training, and go from there. I think it's very helpful to really seek out someone that knows the business. And if you already have a doctor who um, makes referrals for strength training, that's great. my experience is that doctors don't always know the best route for that.
Right.
But you know, sometimes you can you can check into any kind of powerlifting organization in your area and then go to a powerlifting meet and start talking to people. And that's a great way to find out who's the best and most affordable and so on.
Well, Andrea's fortunate because in our clinic, we have an exercise physiologist on staff that could easily help her.
Yeah.
That could help her get going with her
Right.
initial plan and help hook her up with people if we need someone close to her. I think a lot of it too comes down to the motivation part of it for
Right.
people with any type of new exercise programming, because we all think, oh, we should be doing that, and we're going to do that, and then
And then we don't.
right. And I think it's a lot of it is carving out the time. First of all, like figuring out how it would fit into your day. It's kind of, as Russell said, it needs to become part of our life.
Yeah.
And so it shouldn't be a necessarily separate thing. And Faith is so inspiring, her story. We're not going to be able to, the majority of us, achieve the kinds of things that Faith has achieved. But if we can do a fraction of it and do it consistently, it will benefit our health, because strength training, as Russell said, it improves every aspect of our health. And they used to think that cardio exercise is the only type of exercise that actually improves your health. And the more they looked at the strength training, the benefits were there, some of the similar benefits, even with insulin resistance, which used to be thought to be only endurance exercise could improve that. But actually, strength exercise can definitely make an impact on insulin resistance. So, and a lot of people really enjoy strength training compared to cardio exercise. So, but one of the benefits of the strength exercise for some of our patients is that it's not as challenging to the metabolic system as cardio exercise is. So for people who are really challenged metabolically in terms of like having a lot of the hunger signals that are abnormally elevated, or their bodies, what are called the security signals that are suppressed, the strength training is a better initial choice to start working on your fitness. But it's also better from the standpoint of later, if you start out with cardio and you're not strong, you're actually like, you could potentially be mismatching the engine and the body. So, you could be training your engine to be like a Ferrari and your body's still like, no, I don't want to say a bad thing about any cars, but something.
Let's just call it a Ford Pinto from the 1970s.
No. And so you're going to be more prone to injury. So it's not bad to start with a strength foundation. And once your body is stronger, then when you introduce cardio, your body is more what's called efficient, meaning it doesn't cost as much energy to do the cardio because your muscles are supporting your body more. And you've got more muscle energy to rely on. But I think that like people like Andrea, you have access to this facility, and we've talked about it before, but it's like, how can we really take it more seriously and maybe weave it more into the medical programming where you're taking advantage of a structured plan, set up, as Faith said, by a professional, and having the support you need and figuring out how to work it in. And people think that it's all or nothing. I mean, they think if I can't dedicate 150 minutes a week or however much weekly to my exercise, then it's not worth doing. But that's not true. You know what? Even 10 minutes can make a difference. And so I think but also what Faith was saying about focusing on form, and Mark, you were bringing that up. That's what we always recommend is the very first step. You have to have someone who really is monitoring your form when you're doing these exercises. And even if you're even if you have a history of doing the strength exercise, but you've never really done it with someone who can guide you, an exercise physiologist, a certified trainer, somebody, you want to make sure that you have proper form for injury risk, but also for the effect of the strength training, because we all have weaknesses and we all favor our strength areas. So if you're trying to lift something and part of your body's weak, the part that's not as weak is going to do all the work. And so that part's going to strengthen while the other part continues to remain weaker. And eventually you'll become injured. So anyway, I think it's you got to have a whole plan. It's got to fit into the plan. There's got to be the nutrition that supports it. If you have injuries, definitely a physical therapist on the team is really good. But and small steps are so powerful.
Yeah.
Russell, I want to drill down more on the science. During graduate school, you did some research that really correlated strength and ability to protect ourselves from things like falling.
Yeah.
And the notes that you sent over, I was really intrigued about this leg press strength ratio that really was predictive as to whether we were going to fall or not. That's just wild. Tell us more about that.
Oh yeah. I was part of one research study, and what's interesting is in the 15 years since I was part of that study, the body of literature on this has really grown substantially. But basically, our study looked at it's called threshold strength and strength endurance, and how it relates to activities of daily living and functional mobility. And we were studying adults age 65 years and older, and basically looking at how strong were they, and then over the course of, I think it was like 3 years, how likely was it for them to have like a major orthopedic event? And when I say age 65 and older, like most of those folks were in their mid 70s to mid 80s. And what we found was that when strength degrades to what we figured out was at least 50% of one's body mass in a leg press. In other words, if they're unable to leg press at least half their body weight, their statistical probability of a fall goes way, way up. And in those populations, a fall is usually correlated with a major cascade of declining health metrics. The term sarcopenia is like the big one in the research, where muscle mass just kind of erodes away with age. But the good news is that strength training is incredibly effective. There's research studies on people into their 90s that have shown dramatic improvements in strength and muscle mass and muscle quality, even for very old humans. So I think that just gives a lot of hope. You don't need to be like a super athlete your whole life for this stuff to matter, because like just standing up out of a chair, for somebody in their 25 years old, like that's, you don't even think about it. But I've watched like my own parents, for example, get into their late 70s and then struggle to stand up and even have falls. And, so it's very relevant. And there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And I think an interesting way to do it is to actually break it down. Like strength, you could define as just your ability to generate raw force. But if you actually look at the research, the most important metric actually is power, like muscular power, and power being defined as force times velocity. So basically how much work you can do in a given period of time. And it's that ability to move quickly and explosively that is actually like the most important thing. There's this other metric called rate of force development, where basically how fast your motor units or your neurons can activate your muscle cells. And in the case of elder adult research, like if somebody's walking down the street and they come on some ice, some black ice on the concrete, like how quickly and explosively can you react to that event before falling? And I actually, it's not even relevant. It's like elder adults is one thing, but a close friend of mine who is 31 years old, like she had a major fall last year and just slipped on the sidewalk and had this huge leg fracture. And describing it to me, she was just like, I just didn't respond fast enough. I need to work out, you know. So I just think about like the concept of athletics and athleticism being way more nuanced and relevant than like professional sports.
Yeah. Andrea, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as we get older, like all of my friends, we all talk about like getting up off the couch. It's like the response time is a lot longer now than it used to be. And so when we talk about strength training, that's why everyone's talking about we got to take one of these strength training classes because you need to, as we go forward, you'd want to have like a lot more strength, a lot more bone density as we go forward. And nobody wants to be falling. I mean, everyone I know talks about I don't want to be falling. I don't want to be, having to be scooped up by somebody. I don't want to, I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to, pivot. Um, I mean, even with like these protests that were going on like downtown by me, I was like, well, I can't really go because I can't run, you know? Um, I'll go to the ones where I know that there's no running involved. But like, I mean, you have to think about these things now. And I don't want to be the one who's falling and can't get up. Like that old, I've fallen and I can't get up. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, I need to take some kind of strength thing.
Well, Russell, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, there's Andrea, on that topic of being able to move quickly. There are things that can be done. Like I forget the name of the test, but they basically have people sit on the ground, stand up, and either walk,
Ooh,
jog, or run over to like an object or a spot in space. So basically measuring how quickly you can move. And
that's hard.
you can actually train speed and velocity from any point in life. One of the interesting things is like, you mentioned like it gets harder to move quickly as we get older. Well, it's not really your fault or anybody's fault. Like after age, I believe it's like 35, our fast twitch motor units really start to decline. And these are like the big, they call them type 2 alpha motor neurons from the brain that go down the spinal cord to your muscles. And these are like the big, large diameter axons that send like the biggest electrical signals. Those start to degrade much faster than the smaller diameter axons or the type 1 fibers or more endurance fibers. And so like the research shows like, that decline is going to happen no matter what. But the biggest bank of fitness you can build in your life, you can basically start declining from a higher place. Or, at any point you can like, slow that rate of fast twitch motor unit loss just by using them more.
So should I be getting up off the floor a lot more often?
Well, I mean, I think
It's not pretty.
Yeah, I mean, the take-home message is that it's never too late to actually just start trying to move and bring that kind of performance mindset into your movement. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I went to a yoga class recently. I used to do yoga on a regular basis. And wow, that showed me how out of shape and how unlimber my body had become. But that's really great training for strength and balance and getting up and down and all that stuff. But Russell, I love that you made mention of that research, that 50% leg press. So those leg press machines in the gyms are super easy to use and they're super safe. The machines are, because it's a machine. It's not going to squish you. But like, so I'm a little over 200 pounds. I should be able to leg press at least 100 pounds with
In theory.
with the leg, in theory, with that. And boy, it just really makes sense that our fast twitch ability to quickly and with strength and force, because when you trip and fall, that's what catches you, right? It's that quick movement and that quick ability. And if your muscles are kind of squishy and not limber, it's
You're
not
gonna pick up.
going to be enough, right?
I really liked what Faith was saying about essentially compound movements. And this is, I think we all have a lot to learn from the field of powerlifting. Compound movements where you can use a huge percentage of your musculature in one movement across the board, that is the way to go. Like standing in front of the mirror and doing bicep curls, like that's fun, but it's not necessarily a correlation to human performance in the way of like, being able to stand up in older years or move quickly. So I just think that's an important thing to look at, is like what movements you're doing, and like how applicable they are.
Yeah, yeah. And when you look at exercises like the squat, you're using so many of the big muscle groups all at once, balance. But Faith, when you and I were talking the other day, you said something that I found really profound that has nothing to do with weightlifting. And that is that you are super conscious of holding on to the rails
Yeah.
when you're going up and down stairs and when you're in sort of tricky situations. Tell us more about that.
Well, a couple of things about it. First of all, I want to say that one of the things about getting yourself strong is that your attitude is different, and you have more confidence that you will survive whatever it is, the hip replacement or cancer or whatever it is. It has a tremendous effect on your mental ability to be positive, even while having these kinds of treatments, that you're going to come out great at the other side of the picture, which did happen for me, and I credit attitude with a significant amount of that. But in addition, from the time that I first had this meniscus tear, I said it's time to be more careful as I move around, and I do not go down a staircase without or up without using the handrail, and I don't look on it as something to be, you know. Uh, Oh, this will make me look old.
Well, you probably also the way you do it because of like what you said about how you carry yourself, you probably do it in a way that feels very powerful and confident.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, my dad, I don't know if Andrea, if you ever heard my dad say this when we were kids, but his voice is always in my head. Hands out of your pockets when you're going down the
Mhm.
hill or downstairs.
It
Hands out
means,
of pockets.
right, pay attention.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You need those hands if you slip.
Yeah.
Russell, I wanted to also, in the information that you sent over, you touched on brain health and cognition
Mhm.
and a whole bunch of other benefits of strength training. What are the top two or three that you can tell us, before we wrap things up?
Um, Absolutely. On there's one thing I wanted to mention really quick too, is just that the importance of actually lifting heavy weights. This might sound like, don't want to scare anybody off, but how important it is to um, when you're going to get into this kind of stuff, like work your way up to actually moving weights that are legitimately challenging. The research also shows that, like, if you're not lifting, I think, I forget the exact cutoff. Don't quote me, but I think it's like at least 60% of your one rep max is like on it, like kind of regularly. Like you have to actually be challenging the system. Um, and so again, not to offend anybody, but like little 3-pound weights aren't really going to do anything. You actually have to like,
Bar band and
yeah, I mean, those are great for physical therapy and injury stuff, but for the purpose of building like real strength and real power, like you actually have to lift a substantial percentage of your one repetition maximum. But the area that I find the most fascinating in the field of exercise physiology is that connection to brain health. I personally have been touched by two family members who have passed away from dementia in recent years, and I've been very close and watched that decline happen. And these are both like incredibly smart women, master's degrees, powerful women, and then going down from dementia. And so I've been doing a deep dive into Alzheimer's and dementia research, and there's a lot of really exciting stuff coming out. But just, what unequivocally pops out of the literature is just how critical exercise and metabolic health is. Like Dr. Cooper, I think you've said it multiple times in this podcast. They're now calling it type 3 diabetes. But that connection between like anaerobic power and performance to your metabolic health, and then how that connects to your brain health. It's super interesting. Like there's a research coming out. There's this peptide called clotho, and I would love to do some discussion on stuff like this at some point. But basically, it's a peptide released from your kidneys and your brain during exercise, and they're showing that in little mouse studies, it's actually reversing dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's totally the cutting edge of the research right now. But there's just so much to be learned in this area.
Mm. So I guess what we're hearing is that there's really no downside to strength training.
Well, I actually would be careful in saying that, because this is a metabolism podcast, and like Dr. Cooper alluded to, it is actually super important to pay attention to your health and your metabolic health first. If you're, like, as she said, if you're low on the strength and power side, like, you shouldn't go do a bunch of cardio. On the flip side, I've seen this quite a lot where, it's usually like a, big, large human male who does nothing but strength training and no cardio. And in talking with Dr. Cooper about these situations, you get to a place where your anaerobic enzymes overtake your entire performance or your entire system, where you don't have an aerobic base. And so balance really is key. But I think, again, like, making sure you're healthy, healthy enough to start exercise. B, hopefully you can get in to see a doctor who can give you a metabolic workup and, like, kind of give you a baseline of where you're at, so you know where your weaknesses are. But ultimately, the goal should be to get into a place where you're healthy enough to partake in some kind of strength training, because it is critical.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that I have never, when I got out of PE in high school because I was the editor of the school newspaper, and I never wanted anything to do with sports until I would be able to ski, which I couldn't afford at that time. But I have a system where I do 20 minutes of treadmill before I do my workout 3 times a week. So it isn't much, but it's important.
Right. Helps balance it. Well, I think that one thing to keep in mind is, as Russell said, you can't, we always say too much of a good thing isn't a good thing sometimes.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something to keep in mind. But I think getting that, knowing your body, where you are metabolically is so helpful, because, 2 people doing the same strength routine aren't going to have the same results. And a lot of that's because maybe one person does have metabolic challenges and they're not even getting fuel into their muscles the same way as the other person is, because of their metabolism problems. So I think it needs to be pulled into the medical context as much as possible, into the metabolic context. But there are some downsides. I have definitely seen some risky things happen with strength training. So, of course, for the most part, it's a great thing. But I think some of the common errors are, people, I think, need to understand that a strength base takes years to develop, really, especially for women. And so you wouldn't want to, the first year you're doing strength training, start challenging these high level weights and things, because our tendons and ligaments, they don't train as fast as our muscle fibers do. And so if you jump in there with high weight intensity, with low repetitions and high weight, that's really stressing you right from the beginning, you're very likely to have tendon injuries and potentially rupture tendons and things. And so there's phases of strength training. The first one is referred to as adaptation. And so the adaptation phase is to learn really good form, focus on your form and not heavy weights, just making sure you're going through the motions correctly. And that's really beneficial for conditioning your tendons and ligaments. And you need many, many sessions of that if you're just getting started before you start to challenge into what we call like modified strength, and then eventually a strength phase, and then a maintenance, cycling through these with someone who knows how to set up these programs, I think is really important. Because as Faith said, if you develop bad habits with your form, it's really hard to undo those and to go back and learn the correct way. That's the way with everything in life, really. But I think year after year after year of strength training is where you really start seeing the true benefits. Although, yes, within just a few workouts, you'll notice some benefits for sure. But it's something to kind of ease into and have a plan. The other thing that I see sometimes that is risky is, gyms are great, but sometimes the trainers are not that educated. And I have definitely seen injuries occur, and there's something called rhabdomyolysis, which is a really dangerous condition where the muscles go into a breakdown phase. But I've seen that occur because of trainers pushing people beyond their limits at gyms and it's usually women again that are being pushed this way, that don't have a strength base, and they're in a gym with a trainer who's not that educated, who's pushing them. It's one thing to push someone to just inspire them and encourage them, but when the person is saying, I can't do this, and then their intuition is that they shouldn't be really doing this, and they're being pushed and pushed and pushed. And next thing you know, they actually have developed, they're urinating a dark tea color, they're feeling intense pain. We have delayed muscle onset soreness, delayed onset muscle soreness, which is normal after workouts, because as your muscles are adapting to the loads that we're on and they're recovering and regenerating, that's normal. But if it's prolonged and it just keeps going on day after day after day after you've done some hard workout, and then your urine is a dark color, that could be a sign of a serious condition where your muscles are in a breakdown phase, and it can lead to kidney damage and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that becomes a medical emergency. But I'm not saying that's going to happen to very many people, but I have seen it happen. So these are the things to think about, to be sensible and not to go in with that all or nothing attitude, but to aspire to do what Russell's saying, aspire to getting to the point where you feel like your foundation is there enough to stress those muscles more and more, to continue to make these improvements. But
Yes.
definitely build that foundation. And I think if you're a male, there can be similar risks if you have low testosterone levels. Also for either gender, low thyroid levels are a real risk when you're doing strength training, because low thyroid conditions cause weakness in what's called the proximal muscles, which are hips and shoulders. And so it causes much more injury risk in the limbs if you go into strength training with low thyroid levels and low testosterone for males. And so just knowing your hormonal profile and your metabolic profile, I think it makes so much difference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That saying too much of a good thing is can be a bad thing. But before we wrap up, Faith, you mentioned that you had your bone density checked earlier in your weightlifting career, and it was off the charts.
Yes, my partner and I, who traveled around the world together, were both evaluated by some doctors that were doing research on it, and that's what they said. It was
Wow.
that our bone density was off the charts. I wanted to mention also that I think using a combination of things is very good. Like Mark mentioned, getting back to yoga, I have a little workout I do. It takes 10 minutes in the morning, and it's a combination of Pilates and yoga. And it's the thing that gets my old body moving without all of I call it my snap, crackle, and pop exercise. And then twice a week I go to Tai Chi, so I get a big help with balance from that.
That's
Mm.
great.
Wow, Faith, you are so inspiring. You're actually a published author, and I'd love for you to give the name of the book. It just came out late last year, right? Your
Yeah, it came
memoir.
out in September of last year. It's called Getting to Justice from Unwed Mother to State Supreme Court.
Hmm.
And it's available wherever you find books. This has been so inspiring, Faith, because I just love your intentionality. It's you haven't left your health to chance. You're taking action in ways that are practical and interesting to you and fun and just inspiring for the rest of us. That
Thank
as
you,
we
Mark.
age, we got to take care of this old body. So,
Well, it's
um,
been very inspiring to me to learn about Dr. Cooper and to be able to read her book, and thank you all for the contribution that I've received today.
oh,
Oh, well,
that's
thank you.
fantastic. And Dr. Cooper, the Metabolic Storm.
Mhm.
What edition are we at this point?
Unfortunately, we're still at the second edition, which was like I think 10 years ago. But believe it or not, I'm working on the third edition and I'm making some progress on that. And so I can't give a time when it's going to be ready, but it will be very different. I mean, it still has the core principles of of the original Metabolic Storm, which originally was, I believe now, what, 13 years ago or so.
Wow.
Long time ago.
Yeah. So it's still all the same core science, core beliefs, but the landscape's changed so much. And
So
so,
different now.
yeah, so I feel like the new edition, I don't have to take that apologetic,
And the
convince persuasion of
yeah,
why diets don't work. It now I think people are more aware of this, and so we're kind of pushing the envelope way, way more. I'm going to be pushing the envelope a lot more on the new edition, and so yeah, so we'll be getting that going.
Well, I love the fact that you and Andrea have been friends and partners since you were toddlers.
Yeah.
Um, Andrea, what do you have any final thoughts on today's episode?
I like thinking that strength training is not just it's not just about lifting weights, and it can be so many different things. And I think we should think of it as a broader spectrum.
Yeah.
I like figuring that all out. I
Hmm.
think that that's a good thing. And I like Faith's approach to thinking of it as a whole body, whole mind thing, like what both you and Russell were saying about how you should think of it really from head to toe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a really interesting concept.
Russell, you are inspiring as well. And I wanted to, since Dr. Cooper never brags about herself, like not even once, I can count a lot of times when I have bragged about myself. But you said something in the note that you sent over, Russell, that I thought was very touching. You've done a ton of research. You've been in this space for many, many years. And you said something about Dr. Cooper that just blew me away in terms of her level of ability in this space. And I'll just let you finish the thought.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've just spent a lot of time around top tier PhDs in exercise physiology, and I've, being a nerd by birth, by birthright, I've spent my head in the literature for I think something like 18 years now, where it's a passion of mine. I love reading in this space, and yeah, Emily Cooper brings a perspective to all of this that is like hands down the most comprehensive, dynamic, nuanced, and I think like real world applicable to the human condition. I mean, it's difficult to articulate totally, but I Dr. Cooper, I think that as far as in the United States go, that I think you're like the top mind in metabolism and how it relates to human health and wellness and like metabolic medicine. But then also, I knew you before you were focused on the diabetes stuff and you're working more with athletes and stuff. And the way that you bring metabolic science to human performance and then tying in that wellness, that holistic wellness side. I just haven't encountered another voice in the world so far that brings that level of holistic approach. So I'm
Oh,
very grateful to know you. Just to there was two thoughts that came to mind a couple minutes ago when we were talking about just people getting into strength training. This is a little science fact that I kind of blew my mind when I learned it a bunch of years ago. But whenever you start doing a new activity that's related to strength training, for the first 3 months of hard training, any kind of strength gains you see are 90% neurological adaptations. Think about that for a sec. When you start lifting weights, it's 90% neural adaptations. And so like, that goes back to what Dr. Cooper says, and that it does take time and it takes years to actually see like structural changes at the tissue level from exercise. Takes a long time. So that's where looking at this from a lifestyle perspective, and then I think bringing in that metabolic perspective where, again, like if you can't fuel it, don't do it. And in particular with strength training, like what we're really talking about is the anaerobic system. And again, anaerobic glycolysis, which it requires carbohydrates. You can't have glycolysis without carbohydrates. So like if you want to increase performance, it has to be fueled. And so, yeah, I think just trying to bring in that holistic perspective is key. And then like it doesn't need to be like top level athlete stuff. Like I was just thinking about something you said, Andrea, about just doing something, but like even just like 10 body weight squats in the middle of the day when you're at your desk. I have a cubicle these days. I'm actually very embarrassed to admit that. And it's the first time in my life where I'm actually having to like think about exercise and, oh my gosh, I haven't moved in 4 hours. What am I going to do? So, I'll grab my skateboard and go do like a little lap around the building. And, but yeah, it really doesn't need to be an exhausting workout where you're sore for a week, and quite the contrary. The most important thing is just like regular stimulus where you feel that kind of tension going through your quadriceps. And I think that's kind of the last thing I can say here is that just how important the quads are, the lower extremity. Like if you want to really pay attention to the most important muscles in your body for metabolism and performance, and then that correlation to like elder adult wellness and functional mobility, just strong legs. Like it's your two pillars of wellness. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love what everybody has kind of touched on, and that is find what you find interesting. Like I started golfing with some guys who never ride in a power golf cart when we go golfing. So they just have push carts. So I bought a push cart. And I'll tell you, when you walk miles pushing your cart up and down hills, and especially in the brush where I go when I golf, the next day I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a workout. My body feels that. But and I'm so glad, Russell, that you touched on fueling. And if you want to look back at past episodes, fueling your exercise, Dr. Cooper has a lot of great advice in some of the past episodes. Because yeah, if you're strength training, obviously, Dr. Cooper, we need to think about pre-fuel and post-recovery.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, gosh, this has been so much fun. I appreciate each of you, and I'm so inspired by everybody here. Faith, Russell, thank you, Andrea, Dr. Cooper, for another edition of Fat Science.
No diets, no agendas, just science that makes you feel better.